Evelyn could say some things out her mouth that are really cutting.
But your daughters are being held emotionally hostage to your ex-wife's bitterness towards you.
Mm-hmm.
You and her need to get on the same side of the table and free those girls. Because the elephant in the room that nobody will talk about is Evelyn Braxton's attitude.
For years, she stayed quiet, smiled through the pain, carried the weight, and never said a word. But now something has finally broken. Toni Braxton, the voice, the icon, the backbone of her entire family, is done. The responsibility is so heavy. I feel like I can never live my life. And just like that, the silence cracked. Behind the fame, behind the awards, behind the reality show cameras, there's a truth no one wanted to say out loud. A mother whose words cut deeper than anyone admits. A family divided not just by success, but by control, guilt, and emotional pressure that never stopped. Old wounds reopened, cheating, betrayal, years of bitterness that never healed. And instead of staying in the past, it followed the daughters into their adult lives. Picking sides, walking on eggshells. Feeling like choosing your own happiness meant betraying your own blood. And at the center of it all, one question everyone avoided: was Evelyn Braxton holding the family together or quietly tearing it apart? Toni carried her sisters, funded their dreams, took the blame when things fell apart. Even when she went broke, she was still expected to give more. But now, at nearly 60, she's pulling back. Less communication, less tolerance, no more emotional debt. Because what happens when the person who held everything together finally decides to let go? And if Toni steps away, what happens to the family she's been holding up this entire time? Long before the tension became visible on screen, before the arguments, the breakdowns, and the emotional distance, the foundation of the Braxton family was already carrying cracks that no one openly addressed. From the outside, they looked like a tight-knit, God-fearing family. Talented daughters raised with discipline, guided by a strong mother who held everything together after a painful marriage fell apart. But inside that structure, there was something heavier growing quietly. Control mixed with hurt, love tangled with resentment, and expectations that slowly turned into emotional pressure. When Evelyn Braxton's marriage ended after years of infidelity, it didn't just break a relationship. It reshaped the entire emotional environment of the household. The betrayal wasn't processed and left behind. It lingered, and according to many observations and moments captured over the years, it began to influence how she raised her daughters. There were no neutral sides, no safe middle ground. You were either with her or against her. And for daughters who just wanted both parents, that kind of emotional divide created confusion, guilt, and quiet fear. Toni, being the eldest and the most responsible, felt that shift the most. While the other sisters reacted in their own ways, Toni adapted by becoming the peacekeeper, the one who didn't complain, didn't push back, didn't add more stress to an already fragile situation. She learned early that her role wasn't just to succeed, it was to support, to protect, and to carry. And over time, that role stopped being temporary. It became her identity. Every decision she made, every opportunity she took, came with an invisible question attached. How does this affect my family? That kind of thinking doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from years of being made to feel responsible for everyone else's well-being. And even when she started achieving massive success, becoming the breakout star, the dynamic didn't change. If anything, it got worse. Because success didn't bring freedom, it brought obligation. Toni's rise meant she now had the resources to help, and with that came expectation. Not suggestion, expectation. She wasn't just a sister anymore, she became the provider, the fixer, the safety net. And when things didn't go right for the others, failed deals, missed opportunities, the blame didn't always stay where it belonged. It circled back to her, subtly, emotionally, in ways that made her feel like she hadn't done enough, even when she had done everything. That's the kind of pressure that doesn't explode immediately. It builds, quietly, over years. And at the center of it all was Evelyn, a mother who, depending on who you ask, was either protecting her daughters or unintentionally controlling their lives through unresolved pain. Her strong personality, her sharp words, her unwillingness to fully let go of the past, especially when it came to her ex-husband, created an environment where emotional freedom was limited. Even forgiveness became complicated. Because how do you move forward when the person guiding you is still looking backward? The bitterness from the marriage didn't just stay between two people. It seeped into the family dynamic. It shaped conversations, influenced loyalties, and most importantly, it placed emotional weight on daughters who were never supposed to carry it. Toni saw what happened when boundaries were crossed. She saw how her sister Tracy was treated for being close to their father. That alone was enough to teach her a powerful lesson. Don't step out of line. Don't challenge the emotional structure. Don't risk being seen as disloyal. So instead, she adjusted. She held back her feelings. She played her role. She kept the peace, even when it cost her peace. And that's the emotional history that makes everything happening now hit harder. Because this isn't just about a disagreement. It's about decades of suppressed emotion, years of responsibility placed on one person. A family system where love existed, but so did pressure, guilt, and control. And when those things go unspoken for too long, they don't disappear. They wait, and eventually, they demand to be felt. The shift didn't happen overnight. There was no single explosion, no dramatic walkout that suddenly changed everything. Instead, it was years of quiet sacrifice, slowly turning into exhaustion, until one day, Toni Braxton couldn't hold it in anymore. I feel like I can never live my life. That wasn't just frustration. That was a confession. Because behind every performance, every appearance, every success story, there was a reality no one fully understood. Toni wasn't just building her career. She was carrying an entire family system on her back. From the moment she became the breakout star, the expectations locked in. She wasn't allowed to just win. She had to bring everyone with her. And at first, she did. She used her influence to open doors for her sisters, helped secure deals, created opportunities that most families could only dream of. But when those opportunities didn't work out, when things fell apart, somehow the responsibility circled back to her. Not directly, not always loudly, but in ways that made it clear you should have done more. And that's where the pressure started to change shape. It stopped being support and started becoming obligation. Even financially, the weight was crushing. Toni has openly spoken about going broke, filing for bankruptcy, not just because of bad contracts, but because she was constantly giving, constantly supporting, constantly trying to keep everyone afloat. And yet, even in her lowest moments, the expectation didn't stop. She was still Toni Braxton, still the one everyone looked to, still the one who had to fix things. Imagine losing everything and still being treated like you owe more. That's not success. That's a trap. And the most painful part? It wasn't coming from strangers. It was coming from inside the family, shaped, reinforced, and in many ways driven by the emotional structure Evelyn had created over the years. Because every time Toni tried to step back, every time she tried to choose herself, it came with guilt. The kind of guilt that makes you feel like you're abandoning your own blood. The same narrative that had been built since childhood. Loyalty equals sacrifice. But then came the realization. Toni wasn't just helping anymore, she was being held in place. Reality TV made it impossible to hide. For years, viewers watched the tension, the arguments, the breakdowns, the moments where Toni clearly held back what she really wanted to say. You could see it. She would pause, smile, change the subject, carry on. But inside, something was building. Because when you're constantly walking on eggshells, constantly managing other people's emotions, constantly being the strong one, eventually you run out of space to exist as yourself. And then came the turning point. Not loud, not explosive, but final. Toni started pulling back. Less communication, less involvement, less emotional availability. Not because she stopped caring, but because caring had cost her too much for too long. And for the first time, she wasn't asking for permission to choose herself. She was just doing it. And that's what makes this moment so powerful and so uncomfortable. Because when the person who has always carried everyone finally sets boundaries, it forces everyone else to confront something they've been avoiding. What happens now, when Toni Braxton is no longer willing to carry the weight? As Toni began pulling back, something unexpected happened. The cracks that had always been there became impossible to ignore. Not just for her, but for everyone watching. Because once the strong one stops absorbing everything, the real dynamic gets exposed, and suddenly, conversations that used to feel normal started sounding different, sharper, heavier, more revealing, especially when it came to Evelyn. Her words had always been strong, sometimes funny, sometimes brutally honest. But now people started hearing something else underneath them, bitterness that never fully healed, pain from the past that never really left. And more importantly, control disguised as protection. Because when Evelyn spoke about her ex-husband, the anger was still fresh, even after all those years. The stories of betrayal, the cheating, the humiliation, they were real, and no one could deny that she had every reason to be hurt. But the twist wasn't about what happened to her. It was about what happened after. Because instead of that pain staying between two people, it spread, quietly, into the lives of her daughters, into how they saw relationships, into how they navigated loyalty, into how they chose sides. And once people started connecting those dots, the narrative shifted. This wasn't just about a strict mother raising strong women. This was about unresolved pain shaping an entire family dynamic. And here's where the second twist hits. What if Toni's struggle wasn't just about money, responsibility, or fame? What if it was about emotional control that had been normalized for decades? Think about it. Every time Toni tried to step outside that structure, she felt guilt. Every time she chose herself, it felt like betrayal. That doesn't come from nowhere. That comes from conditioning. From being taught directly or indirectly that your role is to hold everyone together, no matter the cost. And when that belief is reinforced over years, through words, reactions, comparisons, even silence, it becomes part of who you are. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's why Evelyn's decision to write a book stirred so much tension. Because instead of reflection, instead of healing, it felt like reopening wounds, revisiting the betrayal, the anger, the past, without fully acknowledging how that pain may have affected her daughters. She spoke about what was done to her, but not necessarily what may have been passed down because of it. And people noticed. They started comparing, looking at other families, pointing out how different outcomes can be when parents handle separation with peace versus resentment. The comparison to Tina Knowles and her daughters wasn't random. It was symbolic. One example of conflict handled with grace, another of pain that lingered. And suddenly, the question became uncomfortable. Was Evelyn protecting her daughters, or projecting her pain onto them? Because the more the story unfolded, the clearer it became. Toni wasn't just breaking away from responsibility. She was breaking away from a cycle. And cycles don't break quietly. They break relationships, they break expectations, they force truth into the open. And once that truth is out, everything changes. Because now it's no longer just about what happened in the past. It's about who is still carrying it, and who finally decided to put it down. Once Toni started pulling away and the deeper dynamics began surfacing, the reaction wasn't quiet. It was emotional, messy, and impossible to contain. Because when one person in a family system changes, especially the one holding everything together, it forces everyone else to confront realities they've spent years avoiding. And in the Braxton family, that reality hit hard. Fans who had followed their journey for over a decade suddenly started seeing things differently. Moments from the past, arguments, side comments, emotional breakdowns began to make more sense. What once looked like normal family drama now felt like something deeper, something rooted in years of pressure, unresolved pain, and unspoken expectations. Social media lit up with debates. Some defended Evelyn, pointing to her strength and what she endured. Others sided with Toni, saying no one should have to carry that kind of emotional and financial burden for a lifetime. And that's where the divide really began. Because this wasn't just about one argument or one decision. It was about perspective. About whether people saw Evelyn as a mother who sacrificed everything, or a mother whose unresolved pain shaped her daughters in damaging ways. And for Toni, that perspective shift mattered more than anything. For years, she had protected the image of the family, stayed quiet, held things in. But now, by stepping back, she was indirectly forcing the truth into the open, without even saying much. Inside the family, the emotional impact was even heavier. Relationships that were already fragile became more strained. The sisters, who had always been caught between loyalty to their mother and their own personal struggles, were now facing a new reality, one where Toni wasn't playing the same role anymore. And that changes everything. Because when the fixer steps back, problems don't disappear. They surface, old tensions rise, resentments come back. And the balance that once held the family together starts to shift in unpredictable ways. Some may feel abandoned, others may feel relieved, but no one remains unaffected. And then there's the emotional cost. To years of stress, pressure, responsibility, even health issues that people began connecting to the environment Toni had been living in. Conversations around her lupus resurfaced, with many speculating that chronic stress may have played a role in triggering or worsening her condition. Whether medically confirmed or not, the idea itself added another layer to the story, because it raised a painful question. How much did it cost Toni to keep everyone else okay? Financially, emotionally, physically. The toll was undeniable. And as she approaches a new phase of her life, nearing 60, that realization seems to have become clearer than ever. This isn't just about setting boundaries anymore. It's about survival, about finally choosing peace after decades of pressure, about recognizing that love doesn't have to mean sacrifice to the point of self-destruction. But here's the part that makes the fallout so powerful. Toni didn't explode. She didn't publicly attack. She didn't create chaos. She simply stepped back. And sometimes, that speaks louder than anything else, because silence, distance, and boundaries have a way of exposing truths that arguments never could. And now the family and the public are left to sit with that truth. A truth that asks, was Toni ever really free? Or was she holding everything together at the cost of herself? At first, it looked like Toni was distancing herself. Then it felt like she was protecting her peace. But the deeper you look, the more unsettling the truth becomes. Because what if Toni Braxton wasn't stepping away from her family? What if she was escaping a role she was never meant to carry in the first place? For years, the narrative was simple. Toni is the strong one, the successful one, the responsible one, the one who holds everything together, the one who makes sacrifices so everyone else can survive. But now, that narrative is being flipped on its head. Because strength, when forced for too long, stops being strength. It becomes survival. And survival comes at a cost. The final twist isn't about Evelyn. It isn't even about the sisters. It's about Toni finally seeing something she couldn't see before, that the role she was praised for, may have been the very thing that trapped her. Think about it. Every time she succeeded, the expectations grew. Every time she gave, it became the standard. Every time she stayed silent, the system stayed intact. And slowly, without realizing it, Toni didn't just support the family. She became the system. The emotional backbone, the financial safety net, the peacekeeper, the one who absorbs everything so no one else has to. But here's the part that changes everything. Systems like that don't survive when the person at the center steps away. They collapse. And that's exactly what makes this moment feel so different. Because Toni isn't just taking space, she's removing herself from a structure that depended on her silence, her sacrifice, and her sense of responsibility. And once she's out of that role, everyone else has to face themselves. No more safety net, no more emotional buffer, no more Toni fixing everything behind the scenes. Just truth. Raw, uncomfortable, unavoidable truth. And that's why this isn't just a family situation anymore. It's a transformation. Because the moment Toni chose herself, she didn't just change her life, she changed the entire dynamic. And here's the cliffhanger no one can answer yet. What happens to a family when the person who held it together finally lets it fall apart? Because if Toni never goes back to that role, then this isn't just distance. This is the beginning of a completely new chapter. One where love might still exist, but control, obligation, and silent suffering no longer do. And not everyone is ready for that kind of change. After everything, the years of silence, the pressure, the sacrifices, the emotional weight, we're left with one uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the strongest person in the room isn't the one holding everything together. It's the one who finally decides to let go. So now the question isn't just about Toni Braxton. It's about you. If you were in her position, would you keep carrying your family, even if it was slowly breaking you? Or would you choose yourself, knowing it might change everything forever? Because that's the reality Toni is facing right now. This isn't just distance. This isn't just taking a break. This is a woman finally saying, I deserve to live my life too. And what about Evelyn? Do you think she was protecting her daughters the only way she knew how? Or do you believe her unresolved pain created a cycle that affected them all? Or, and if that's true, can that kind of damage ever really be undone? This story hits deeper than celebrity drama. It's about family roles, emotional responsibility, generational patterns, and the moment you realize you don't have to keep playing the role you were given. So tell me, was Toni right to step back? Or should family always come first and sound no matter the cost? And the biggest question of all, how many people are living Toni's story right now silently? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you want more deep breakdowns like this, because this isn't just a story, and it's a mirror, and what you see in it might say more about your life than you think.